Suddenly she felt her whole body shift once more, before she was unceremoniously dumped off of him. "Stay still," Matthias ordered sternly. It was only when her back hit the familiar feeling of a soft bed did she realize where he had taken her and what he planned to do with her. She looked around frantically before scrambling to get up the bed. "Layla!" Matthias immediately catching one of Layla's flailing wrists and pulled her still. "Ack!" The pain she had forgotten returned in full force, bringing tears into her eyes as she yelped in pain. Matthias frowned, and immediately released his hold on her. Just as he did, Layla twisted her body further away from him that she had almost fallen off the bed. He won't say it out loud, but he would admit to himself that he misplaced his anger a while ago on Layla when he had scolded and grabbed her harshly. The anger was for his cousin, Riet von Lindman, after all. And he had dumped it on her in a fit of anger. However now, he could only feel concern over her battered body. Matthias knew very well that Layla would have hidden from her Uncle Bill the fact she had been involved in a car accident, much less had been the victim of one, so he had prepared beforehand some medicine, safely tucked away in his room at the annex. He brought it here, all the way from his mansion. He had planned to bring her here from the start, reeling her in with the sparsely written note he had attached to the leg of her precious bird. Matthias can't help but laugh mirthlessly to himself as he remembered how imprudent he had been acting, watching as she dragged herself to the edge of the bed. Just as Layla was about to bolt off the bed and out of the room, Matthias intercepted her and gently plopped her back onto the bed, making her huff out in surprise. Just as he did, Layla twisted her body further away from him that she had almost fallen off the bed. Fortunately, Matthias' reflexes were quick, and managed to stop her from toppling over, this time his hold gentler from moments ago. However, his resumed contact with her only served to make Layla thrash some more in panic. "Let go of me! No!" Layla screamed hysterically, the pain in her body momentarily forgotten. Hastily moving back from him as she attempted to escape once again, but Matthias swiftly got on top of her, straddling her waist, keeping her in place. He grabbed both of her wrists gently, pinning them over her head as he held her down. "I don't want to!" she shrieked, but Matthias held on to her resolutely, careful not to put too much pressure on her this time. Layla continued to thrash, making him take a deep breath. "Duke, don't be like this, please!" She kept pushing him away. The more she protested, the more it grated on Matthias' nerves. The white sheets which had been painstakingly prepared just this morning began to wrinkle beneath her weight, her thrashing crumpling the sheets in no time. She finally looked up at him and began to beg. It hurt. Layla struggled feebly beneath him, squirming futilely before sobs racked her body as a terrible wave of helplessness washed over her. Stop, please. She begged, fat tears streaming down her face. Please, I'm begging you, stop. It hurts so much. She whispered. Duke, please. Layla called out pleadingly, whispering beneath him. It hurts so much. She sniffed, crying softly from under him. The Duke's face began to blur as fresh tears kept forming, but she resolutely met his gaze, as he eyed her carefully. She'd been paralyzed by both her fear and the Duke looming above her. The pain in her body screamed for relief the more she strained as she lay on the bed. Riet. Did he touch you? Matthias inquired. He whispered as he eyed her slowly from the face to the bottom of her belly. Matthias tilted his head as his eyes met hers once more, prodding gently for her to answer truthfully. His hair swayed to the side as he did, revealing his intense gaze on her. Layla was shocked to notice as Matthias stood over her, his eyes glancing at her figure lying on the bed. Immediately Layla shook her head in denial despite the sobs racking through her. She hated what Marquis Lindman had done to her, but hated all the more that Matthias had found out about it. He shouldn't have to. No. He didn't do it. She began to explain. He suddenly came up and greeted me. I felt scared, that's why. That's why I run away from that place. That's all that happened. Really? Matthias listened intently as she stammered through her explanation. The shaking of her body seemed to finally calm down after a few more rounds of her crying, then stopping, then crying again, until she calmed herself into exhaustion. Layla. Her cheeks glistened with the streaks left by her tears. Gently, Matthias pried off his fingers that held down her arms before moving to caress her hands. Gone was the strong grip from before, replaced only with such gentle and tender caresses. "Stay still, Layla," he murmured softly, interlocking their fingers together as Layla stiffened beneath his touch on instinct. "Lie still, I won't hurt you," he repeated as he held her gaze, and he dipped his head down a little closer to her. "If now I push this man and run away, can I get out of this place? No. That's just an empty hope. Ironically, the only hope I can hold now is the Lord Duke. More precisely, a piece of conscience that this man might still have." "Really?" Layla finally responded in a meek voice. She was being quite foolish right now, but she was also earnest. She had no choice but to submit right now. She was at his mercy after all. She hoped that he would also grant her a small mercy in her vulnerable state. Layla looked up at Matthias pleadingly as he remained unresponsive to her inquiry. She shivered as he stared at her some more. His eyes raked her up and down in appreciation, wetting his lips lightly at the sight of her tear-streaked face. He pulled himself away from her, hands digging into the pocket of his jacket where he had shoved the returned handkerchief carelessly in his haste to catch up to Layla. She watched as he brought the handkerchief next to her forehead and began slowly dabbing away the sweat on her brow. Matthias kept gently wiping at her face, grabbing her chin gently to keep her eyes on his when she instinctively tried to turn her head away from him. He tucked back her ear a few stray locks of her hair before fully standing up as he finished wiping her face clean. Layla watched attentively every move he made, struggling to stay still so as to not aggravate him. Matthias then got off the bed as he rummaged through some of the things he had set aside. Layla watched attentively every move he made. Her emerald orbs shone brightly in the dimmed light. Matthias then took off his coat so he could move freely to treat her. Layla watched as Matthias took off his jacket. Matthias noticed the stare. He glanced at her figure lying on the bed. The two of them were the only ones in the annex, which was located deeply inside the forest. In her head she had already imagined the multiple scenarios she could have done to push him away and make her escape, but she knew there was no escape now. And that just pushed her deeper into despair. Matthias then got off the bed as he rummaged through some of the things he had set aside, and returned with a medicine box in hand. Layla was confused looking at the medicine box he was carrying. "Show me your injuries," he gently ordered, and Layla immediately shook her head frantically, and began retracting her words from before. "Oh, there's no need really. I wasn't really injured even." "You said it hurts," Matthias interrupted. "Your words were, it hurts. So much," he reminded, eyes narrowed as he regarded her. "No, I was. That was." Layla stumbled through an explanation, unable to provide a good excuse on the spot as she gingerly sat up from her position. Her eyes darted everywhere around her but his. "Or do you want me to check it out?" Slightly annoyed by her stubbornness and refusal to look at him, Matthias swifting grabbing the hem of her skirts. My back, shoulder and back are a little hurt, boo, but they don't need to be treated," she reluctantly admitted. "Take it off." "What did you say?" Layla's eyes snapped towards him, before shaking her head in denial once more, unwilling to remove any layers of clothing around him. But Matthias wouldn't take no for an answer. His eyes narrowed at her before growling under his breath. "If you don't want to show me, then I'll call the doctor." Doctor? Who?" "Who else but Dr. Ettman?" he threatened her. "How could that be? Seriously?" Layla's breath hitched at the thought, before shaking her head once more, pleading for him not to do it. She would rather drown by the Schulter River than be caught dead by Kyle's father in such a compromising position. "Then make the choice, Layla. Either strip and allow me to assess your injuries myself, or I will call for Dr. Ettman." He gave her an ultimatum. Matthias waited patiently for her final decision. She was well aware by now that Matthias could do whatever it takes, just so he could get what he wanted in the end. Just as he once did before. The circumstances between them hadn't changed. She was still bound to cross paths with him, doomed to suffer in his presence. She would only complicate things further for herself if she would continue to resist. She had her answer now. She's made a decision. But that didn't stop the fresh tears from running down her face as she felt utterly useless in front of him. The tears flowed, saturating her blouse the more she cried while Matthias continued to stare at her. How happy he must be again to see me cry. Layla thought miserably. She choked down her sobs, swallowing as she turned away from him, giving him a silent permission to undress her himself. Slowly, she felt the gradual loosening of her blouse as his fingers deftly unbuttoned it one by one. Her body shook with sobs as she kept her head down, aiding in removing her blouse once everything had been unbuttoned. The cloth slid down her skin, revealing the soft, smooth flesh underneath. It had only been a second, but for Matthias it felt as though time moved slowly, sensually revealing inch by inch her skin, teasing him, goading him to touch it. From the slender slope of her neck, to her petite shoulders. His eyes traveled further down, following the perfect curve of her back, riddled with blotches of red bruises. It looked as though any touch of his would bring her to her knees in front of him. Matthias found himself mesmerized by the swelling on her back. It was littered everywhere on the expanse of her left shoulder blade, down to her waist. It was no wonder why she wailed like she did in pain. If I had ignored it, you would have hid your bruises and suffered all by yourself. Matthias thought, causing an anger-like feeling to well up inside him.